It was a mystery that baffled everyone in the small village near the African plains. For years, a majestic elephant emerged from the dense jungle and made his way straight to the humble home of an old man named Thomas. No one knew why. No one understood the bond. But those who witnessed it could see that it was something profound, something beyond mere coincidence. Thomas was no ordinary man. He lived a quiet life on the outskirts of the village, spending most of his time tending to his small garden and watching the horizon as if waiting for something or someone. And sure enough, as if guided by an unspoken promise, the elephant always found his way back to him. The villagers often whispered theories. Some believed it was a spiritual connection. Others thought it was an act of gratitude. But Thomas never spoke of it. Whenever the elephant arrived, he simply greeted it with tear-filled eyes, caressing its massive head as if consoling an old friend. Then, after a few hours, the elephant would turn and disappear into the wilderness, only to return again the following year. But the truth behind their bond was far more heartbreaking than anyone could have imagined. Decades ago, Thomas had been a young conservationist, deeply passionate about protecting wildlife. He had spent years working with elephant rescue programs, fighting against poachers, and saving injured animals from the cruelty of the illegal ivory trade. But there was one elephant that had changed his life forever. Her name was Naya. Naya had been just a calf when Thomas found her, her mother killed by poachers. She was weak, frightened, and on the brink of death. Thomas had carried her in his arms, nursed her back to health, and raised her with a love that went beyond species. The two had formed a bond that could never be broken. For years, they were inseparable. Naya would follow him like a shadow, her giant trunk always reaching for his hand. But as she grew older, it became clear that she needed to return to the wild. Thomas knew it was the right thing to do. With a heavy heart, he released her into a protected reserve, watching as she disappeared into the trees, not knowing if he would ever see her again. But she never forgot him. Every year on the same day, Naya returned, even as she grew into a towering matriarch. Even as she led her own herd, she always found her way back to the man who had saved her life. It was a silent promise, a testament to the love that transcended words. One year, a devastating drought hit the region. Rivers dried up, food became scarce, and animals struggled to survive. Many villagers left, seeking better land, but Thomas refused. He was too old to start over, and he could not leave the place where so many of his memories with Naya were rooted. That year, when Naya arrived, she did not come alone. Her entire herd followed. The villagers, who had once only heard of her visits, now watched in awe as nearly a dozen elephants stood before Thomas's home. It was as if Naya had brought them there for a reason, and she had. The herd, sensing the old man's frailty, began to act strangely. They brought him food, branches heavy with fruit, uprooted plants with nourishing roots. They stayed near his home, providing a strange sense of protection, as if they knew he could no longer fend for himself. The villagers, watching from a distance, were left speechless. It was unheard of, wild elephants caring for a human, as if he were one of their own. For weeks, the herd remained, and in that time, Thomas felt renewed strength. The presence of Naya, her gentle eyes filled with understanding, gave him hope. But deep down, he knew his time was running short. One evening, under a sky painted in hues of gold and crimson, Thomas sat outside his home, Naya by his side. He spoke to her as he always had, telling her stories of their past, of the days when she was just a fragile calf who had needed him. But now, it was he who needed her. That night, Thomas passed away peacefully in his sleep. The next morning, the village awoke to an eerie silence. The elephants stood still, their trunks lowered, their bodies swaying gently. Naya, standing closest to the house, did not move, and then, as if understanding what had happened, she raised her trunk to the sky and let out a deep, mournful cry, a sound so sorrowful that it sent chills down the spines of those who heard it. She did not leave immediately. For 3 days, Naya and her herd remained, standing vigil outside Thomas's home. The villagers, moved beyond words, watched as the elephants mourned in a way that seemed almost human. Then, on the 4th day, without a sound, they turned and vanished into the wilderness. Naya never returned again. Years passed, but the legend of Naya and Thomas endured. The villagers spoke of them to their children, passing down the tale of an elephant's unwavering love. A monument was eventually built at the site of Thomas's home, a simple stone with an engraving of an elephant and a man side by side. But something extraordinary happened years later. One day, an expedition team ventured into the deep jungle, exploring regions untouched by humans for decades. They came upon a clearing where a herd of elephants stood, and among them was a massive, elderly elephant with deep, intelligent eyes that seemed to hold a lifetime of memories. As the researchers watched in silence, the elephant did something unexpected. It approached them and stretched out its trunk, as if searching for something or someone. One of the researchers, an animal behaviorist named Eleanor, had heard the stories of Naya. She had grown up in the village and recognized the elephant immediately. Could it truly be her? Could Naya still be alive, still remembering the man who had once saved her? Eleanor extended her hand, and for a brief moment, Naya held it gently in her trunk. Then, with a slow, almost sorrowful glance, she turned and led her herd back into the depths of the jungle, disappearing once more. Eleanor returned to the village with tears in her eyes. She told the villagers what she had seen, and once again, the story of Naya and Thomas was renewed. The bond between them had never been forgotten, not by the people, not by history, and certainly not by the elephant who had once been a helpless calf saved by the kindness of a single man. And so, the legend lived on, whispered from generation to generation, a testament to the love between a man and an elephant, a love that defied logic, defied time, and proved that sometimes the most powerful connections in life are the ones that cannot be explained. Years later, another surprising event occurred. A young boy from the village, drawn by the stories of Thomas and Naya, set out on a journey deep into the jungle. He was guided only by the hope that he might glimpse the legendary elephant. Days passed, and just when he was about to turn back, he felt the earth tremble beneath him. From the dense foliage, a massive figure emerged. It was Naya's daughter. She bore the same intelligent eyes, the same gentle presence. As the boy stood frozen, the elephant moved closer, extending her trunk in greeting. It was as if she, too, remembered the kindness that had been passed down through generations. And in that moment, the boy understood the bond was not just between Thomas and Naya. It was something greater, something eternal. The legacy of love and compassion had found a way to continue through time, through generations, forever.